High school teachers of Reddit. What is the one thing that you want your students to know that you'd never tell them in person? Story 1. You're unique. You're not special. Set your goals high, but understand that if you change your goals to needs, you will have a lifetime of disappointment. Story 2. One day, you're going to come across people who are not being paid to tolerate you, and all of a sudden, life is going to become considerably more difficult. Story 3. Not a teacher, but an evening janitor. Part of my area is where the robotics club gathers and works. You guys are so amazing. I wish you could see what I see. A group of kids who are all well mixed in ethnicity and gender working hard together. I never see signs of drama when I walk by. When I look through the windows, I can see that you guys are listening to each other and treating each other seriously while also having fun. When you guys leave at night, your room is my favorite room to clean. It's always so clean already, and I get to look at your projects and see what all the elbow grease is doing. It's so encouraging to know that these kids are part of our future. They stay an average of 2 hours after school every day, and you can tell it's not forced. They are so enthusiastic that their energy practically shines into the hallway. I celebrate every time a new award is added to the trophy cabinet in the hall. Story 4. Trying hard is necessary, but not sufficient for most accomplishments. Intelligence is necessary, but not sufficient for most accomplishments. I can't tell the sweet, hard-working, but unintelligent kid he won't be a doctor. I can't tell the smart but lazy he won't be a doctor. Both end up in my remedial class, and blame being in remedial class on mean teachers labeling them. I appreciate childhood is the time for dreams, but it means people make terrible decisions when they don't understand that we just put them at the highest level we think they can pass. We don't know why they are years behind their peers, just that they are. I try to see potential and inspire kids to try their best, I really do. But there's nothing I can do if someone is dedicated to hiding their low intelligence by trying to appear as a lazy instead of trying to hide their higher intelligence by pretending to be unintelligent to get easier work. Story 5. You can be unsuccessful at school, but successful in life. I pretend that it is important for you to do well in my subject, but in reality, you'll probably find your niche in life and be reasonably content, or hopefully extremely happy. You might hate maths, English, or science, but turn out to be the most amazing parent, artist, carpenter, or even a mathematician, playwright, or researcher. You might get the lowest scores in class and end up being the most successful of your peers. I feign annoyance, anger, and disappointment. I reluctantly phone your parents, give you detentions, or write up critical reports. I have to. It's my job. If you do well in my subject, then that's great. But if you don't, then just relax. We can't all be good at everything. Oh, and do you think you hate exams, tests, and homework? Your mild dislike of the work is a mere candle flame compared to the hatred that burns like a million suns that I feel when I have to freaking mark it. Story 6. I teach middle school, not high school, but for me, it's that I know it sucks at home. I see it every day when you come into my class. I see the tears you're hiding, the pain behind the class clown smile, the emotional fragility behind your tough guy persona. I know exactly what it's like to come from a broken home. I wish I could do something, but until you come to me, all I can do is try and let you know, with a look, a smile, a subtle turn of phrase, that I'm always there for you when you need an ear or a shoulder. Story 7. My middle school health teacher made everyone smile when they entered his class. Not in a comedic sense, but as a rule. He made it very clear to all of us that our problems, however big or small, do not need to follow us into his classroom. He promised that for 45 minutes, we got his undivided attention and wanted the same. You need to smile to get into the door. Even if you were having the worst day of your life, you had to smile to get entry into his class. He was the health teacher, and he was big on mental health. He said it is important to smile at least once a day, and he wanted us to meet that quota before his class began. I was a happy kid with a good home life, so smiling was always easy for me. The next year, when my family became a nightmare, I had to promise myself I would smile at least once a day. I broke that promise many times, but I did my best. And you know what? I got to a point where I could trick myself into being happy. It took me a while to finally become happy. I try to smile when I wake up in the morning. I smile when I make eye contact with a stranger. It didn't dawn on me that every time a student smiled as we entered his class, he would also smile back. Part of me wonders if that was the real trick to it all. Having someone smile at you can make you feel better. Smiling at someone can make their day better. Even if you don't mean it, try to smile. Eventually, it will become genuine. Story 8. To my freshmen. Yes, I always know when you didn't do my math because you stayed up late playing Fortnite. You added me as a friend on Epic, so I see that. Also, the amount of work not done in lower grades when new battle passes come out is so coincidental. To all high schoolers I teach, you're dumb, but I do love you guys. I'm not stupid. And while I know you cheat on your homework, I don't care since it's only worth 10% of your grade, and you're foregoing the practice you can get before the test. The sixth graders I teach math to, dear Lord, you make me cringe so hard that I have to take ibuprofen some days. I have so much more, but my lunch break is almost over. Story 9. I taught after-school care summer school for a year, and I want so badly to tell them that 1. Now is a great time to find out who they are and to stop parroting what they hear other people say. 2. Stop trying so hard to make Jamie like you and be your friend because even though you and Jamie have been friends since pre-K, people growing apart is normal, and Jamie is a manipulative minge muffin. 3. I kept Owen and other troublemakers close to me in class because giving them just a little positive attention was infinitely preferable to giving them all of my attention in a negative light. Plus, maybe they just needed someone to listen and give them one-on-one, which I'm happy to do. 4. It's useless saying it because it's not going to make a difference, but this week's crisis won't matter next year, or maybe even next week, and it certainly won't matter on your deathbed. Story 10. A few off the top of my head. Just because I like you as a person doesn't mean that I won't fail you. Being smart isn't a justification for being lazy, and I can't pass someone that never hands in work. I moved you away from your friends because they were taking you down with them. You have a real future in sports, but you need to pass my class to play them. Your friends were making you fail, and if you don't get to play volleyball, I don't know what kind of future you have in front of you. I wish that the positivity that you get in my class could follow you home. I've met your parents, and they are a nightmare. I do my best to encourage you here, but I know that, some days, that just might not be enough. I have never and will never find a student intimidating. That's why I laughed at you when you asked me if I knew who your father was. Yeah, he's the manager of a car dealership. That means nothing to nobody. I had a kid throw a desk at me, and while it scared me in the moment, it didn't make me fear him. One day, you will meet someone who has real power, and I just wish that I could be there to see it. Story 11. One of the most valuable lessons I could teach you is to fake looking busy. If we're supposed to be working on an assignment or reading or whatever, and you see me coming your way, at least have a piece of paper on your desk and a pen in your hand and some stuff on your paper, and then I won't bother you. If you have nothing going on and can't even be bothered to make it look like you're trying, I'm heading your way. This lesson will be invaluable with eventual bosses someday. Story 12. Sort of late to this party, but I often want to tell my students to enjoy themselves more and worry less. And I guess I do tell them that pretty often, but what I really wish I could communicate is that it's perfectly natural to break the rules and be a little more reckless at their age. This would be pretty irresponsible of me to tell them, as kids need their teachers to be role models of good impulses, not bad impulses. But sometimes I want to. Kids today seem very frightened of the future and don't want to take chances, especially when it comes to having fun. I don't blame them based on the environments they are raised in. Also, if they have an A+ in my class, they can make a low F on the final and still wind up with an A-. Story 13. I don't know if there's an exact quote I'd use, but I wish I could let my students know how dumb they look sometimes, and how they need to relax and stop taking themselves so seriously. I also frequently find myself wishing I could rag on kids' clothing, hairstyles that they've obviously put way too much time or money into, but these thoughts only cross my mind when they're being asked. That's the unprofessional, petty stuff I'd say. I could think of something much wiser, but it's my lunch break and Friday, and my brain is fried from trying to keep these kids together a week before finals. Story 14. I don't care if you get high. Either take some edibles so we don't smell it, and don't do it when you're in the actual building, and don't do too much so it's obvious due to how incompetent you're acting. I get it, you have anxiety. I wish you had a better coping mechanism instead of but I'm glad you're doing something rather than avoiding school, etc. Just please, 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 don't give me a reason to send you to the nurse and/or dean. Learn some practical skills. We all have to at some point. Story 15. I'd tell my kids that their stupid decision to stay out on the weekdays and not do any work will probably lead to them doing the same thing their parents do and living the same life. All my kids are incredibly low income. Also, their forced helplessness is not their fault, but I wish I could tell them to recognize it and do something about it. Lastly, please, for the love of God, do the reading. It's not hard. I specifically edited it to not be hard. Story 16. The only thing I don't talk to my students about is relationships. I am a history teacher, and I tell them that Game of Thrones' horrors were very real in history, except the magic and dragon. I'm honest with them and tragedies. But this one girl was talking about how a friend, as a joke, told a guy that she liked the guy, and the guy was being really nice to her, and she had no idea how to tell him she wasn't interested. And all her friends gave her the worst ideas, like just hiding from him, or paying a guy to act like her boyfriend. I wanted to tell her to just be a woman and tell him directly, rip the Band-Aid off. but I have to keep a huge distance from that type of stuff. Or another time, watching this boy, clearly friend-zoned, support this girl whose boyfriend broke up with her. He was really crushing on her, and she was very platonic with him. And it was obvious because teenagers don't realize how obvious they are. I wanted to tell him something, but I didn't, and wouldn't. Story 17. I teach special needs 11 to 14-year-olds, and I'd tell them that growing up is going to be hard for them. And not everyone is going to be as understanding or patient as the staff are at our school. And they need to learn to reel it in sometimes. I'd also tell them how precious and wonderful they are, even when they drive me mad by asking the same question over and over. They might not have the same advantages as other children, but their gifts are just as legitimate as any other child's. Some of them might not know how to flush a toilet, but they sure can draw a perfect replica of the Death Star. Some can't remember their own birthday, but they smile every morning and say how happy they are to see us, and it's just lovely. I love my job. Story 18. One of the most memorable things a teacher said to me, I was really glad she did say it to my face. I really like you as a person, but I hate you as a student. My French teacher told me this when I was in high school, during this period when I was really depressed and on the verge of flunking out. Having her be so honest with me and pointing out that I was wasting my potential made me want to do better, and eventually I did. Story 19. Oof, this is tough. I teach all grades. I'm a speech-language pathologist assistant. The school I teach at is a public charter school that is extremely committed to the life script of going to college. There are no career resources for students who, to put it simply, are not fit for college. There's nothing about trade schools or even jobs right out of high school. The most succinct piece of advice I wish I could give to my students is this. It is completely okay to not want to go to college right away, or at all. It is completely reasonable to not want to be saddled with an ungodly amount of debt for a career you were forced to pick for an amorphous job market. Just make sure you have a plan to do something else. Take it seriously when I'm telling you to not constantly talk about football during a job interview. Know that when a hiring manager asks why you want to work at the company, literally do not say, because I need money. Keep in mind, I'm referring to students who have tremendous pragmatic and academic difficulties. I am by no means saying college isn't worth it for anyone. Just that it would likely not be the most suitable avenue for some of these students. This is something a lot of people don't like to admit, so there's such an unnecessary stigma to it. I just wish these students were not funneled so narrowly into trying to get into an expensive college when, in some cases, are rarely able to read past a 6th grade level. They should have all options presented and feel empowered to choose their own career. I'll add a caveat and admit that the path college led me down, both times, has been by and large extremely unfruitful and frustrating, which probably makes me all the more reluctant to encourage higher education. Story 20. That as a male teacher, I can't be the best teacher I want to be. I won't be able to have a private conversation with my students, but I'll always ask to keep the door open or have another student in hearing distance. I want to give you a hug and say, I'm sorry, after you've told me about something terrible that has happened with your home life, but you'll have to settle for me just talking to you. I feel terrible having to ignore your PMs or texts when you ask me important questions. Or, let's be honest, send me really funny memes. Because I am a man, I'm terrified of something getting misunderstood and being fired from my job. And then on top of that, being branded as something horrible for the rest of my life as a result. And so, I'll always be closed off from my students. Story 21. Not being a teacher myself, I would like to share a piece of wisdom that one of my high school teachers imparted to me, which I didn't fully appreciate until much later in life. I suppose you could say that I was a teacher's pet in many ways. I was a studious child who took academics seriously and was very interested in a lot of typical nerdy pursuits. It was no surprise that I bonded with my math teacher over Star Trek, among other non-academic things. Because we got along so well outside the classroom, I sometimes let my guard down and strayed into more casual topics when we hung out in her office, after school, or whenever. One time, I went off on a rant, expressing disdain for what I felt was frivolous drama typical of boys and girls our age. I wasn't socially active and kept mostly to myself as a loner, but it was hard to ignore the soap opera that frequently spilled over publicly in classrooms, the schoolyard, the cafeteria, and basically everywhere. I was so frustrated at not being able to avoid the irritating nonsense anywhere on the school grounds. Deep down, though, there was a seed of resentment and a sense of sour grapes that I felt too inept and perceived as irrelevant to the inclusive social experience, that I could do little more than serve as an observer. When I concluded my rant with the expressed desire to focus my efforts on academics, as I saw education as my ticket to success and happiness, my teacher laid on me an idea that initially made me wrinkle my nose a bit, but which I now profoundly appreciate. It has been too long for me to recall exactly what was said, But the gist of what she conveyed was that I shouldn't be so dismissive of my peers, even if they are being frivolous and don't really know what they are doing as they break up, make out, and do all the things in between. She cautioned that people who succeed in doing what I desire often advance into adulthood with stunted emotional development, having not used the time when they were young to learn the ins and outs of the messy business of romance and marriage. Just as we make mistakes in homework and review exercises, but learn from them in time for exams, the shenanigans young people get into when they are still naive and often reckless are practiced for real life so that they can productively navigate future long-term relationships. You learn about mutual limits, tolerance, forgiveness, and trust. You develop sensitivity to another's needs and desires. You are compelled to prioritize your own values, choose what you want, and decide who you want to be in relation to others. Suffice it to say, most of what she said to me at that time went in one ear, upon which the brain decided it didn't like it and dumped it out the other. But now, as someone in their 40s, I have not only experienced for myself the truth of her words, but I see it all around me among people whose professional accolades and accomplishments are enviable, but who have personalities and interpersonal skills that are toxic and unpleasant to colleagues and to loved ones. I never got around to thanking Miss Deidecker for that jewel of insight into my life. We are now on opposite sides of the country, but I'd like to think that by telling this story here, where her life lesson will hopefully enrich others, I've honored her as a grateful student. Story 22. I'd tell the girls, stop dating that guy. You're intelligent, ambitious, and talented. He's a sociopath who got kicked off the football team for drunk driving. You could easily run a Fortune 500 company, but if you marry this guy, you'll be living in a trailer park, taking care of this soggy, unappreciative jackass for the rest of your life. Story 23. The best way I've found to cheat on tests is to keep showing up to class. Maybe the professor didn't know it, but every day he went over problems that were on the tests. It was wild. I mean, some of the numbers were changed, of course, but I swear every type of problem he showed us in class was on the test. School was easy once I figured out that most of these teachers subconsciously keep telling us the exact types of things that were on exams. I just learned how to do those and I was set. Story 24. I knew you were cheating, so I gave you a test with the answers in a different order for the rest of the semester. You clearly weren't very bright to figure it out, and yes, I am that spiteful. It was easier than reporting the cheating. Story 25. I would honestly tell my little kindergartners that life is tough. I love you. Many of you can't count on your parents at all. You're poor and have to work harder. I need you to understand how important your education is for having a better life. But I'm a male teacher in early childhood. Distance is very important, and I can't afford to have a parent go all mama bear on me. So I just do my best to make them feel valued in my class.